Good evening. Welcome to the Tuesday, February 11th, 2025 regular meeting of the Town of Milton Select Board. I'm going to begin by calling this meeting to order, and I'd ask everyone in the room to please stand and join us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay. Motion to adjourn. Let's go home. No, I'm only kidding you. So a couple of changes. I'm going to move item 6, public comment, up to next, and I'll get to that in a minute. Item number 5, discussion approval on the East Milton Fire Station bid results, project budget. That's been deferred. We're also going to defer, is it item number 10?
Yes.
Discussion approval of the town administrator's evaluations. And we are also going to go into executive session before, I'm going to move executive session number 17 up. Before we go to item number 8, which is discussion on the comment letter on the MBTA, 7 and 8, yes, 7 and 8. And then we'll return to public session to handle the remainder of the agenda. So, here's how public comment's going to work. We allow 21 minutes in total for public comment at any of our meetings. I already say I have a long list here. Each speaker I'll ask to come up to the microphone on the far left, my far left, to your right. Please state your name and your address, and each speaker will be allotted 3 minutes to speak. At 30 seconds, I'll let you know you're at the 30-second point. I will keep the individual time, and Mr. Milano will keep the totality of the 21 minutes. All good? So with that, I invite Mr. Brian Kelly. Good evening.
I timed this, so you shouldn't have, is this on? Can you hear me?
You're all good. You're good to go.
I timed it, so it's 3 minutes. My name is Brian Kelly. I am a town meeting member from Precinct 7, East Milton. I have a concern regarding the MBTA Communities Act. It has come to my attention that the Executive Office of Housing and Livable Communities has requested that Milton respond to a questionnaire by February 13th. Ironically, this date is 1 day short of the 1-year anniversary when Milton voters decisively rejected the legislation in a special election. They want Milton to sign off and agree to Milton being categorized as a rapid transit community with the hefty 25% housing load that would be imposed on our small town. We have been lumped in with big cities like Quincy because of our antique 38-passenger trolley. Recently, Milton won in the Supreme Judicial Court when it sided with Milton that the guidelines, including the rapid transit classification, were not valid because the state failed to promulgate the guidelines as required by law. Instead of waiting until public hearings have been held and a small business impact study has been completed, the state recently declared an emergency to try and end run around the SJC decision. The state has now decided to try to trick us into agreeing to a rapid transit designation. Like the quote, "If you build it, they will come. If you agree to rapid transit designation and sign it, we will own it." I ask that you not agree to rapid transit classification. Please submit the action plan that the planning board has prepared for you. I will leave you with this. A young woman friend of my family called me on a Sunday a few weeks ago telling me that she was contacted by the Hyundai dealer telling her that her car was worth a lot of money and that she should come in and talk. She went in the previous day, she went to the dealer and they convinced her to sign a lease for a brand new, much more expensive SUV. She thought it would help with both of her parents, who now require wheelchairs, getting them to and from church. The dealer told her to return her existing car back to the credit union where she had financed it. They did not explain that the car was way underwater in value. To her surprise, she owed $10,000 more than the car was worth. I went over some of the implications of this with her, and she started to cry. She could not afford both vehicles. Monday morning, we called the dealer. And we tried to get her out of the lease that she had signed on Saturday. They said no. We called Hyundai Financing, and they said no. We called the AG's office, and they said there was nothing that could be done because she signed the agreement. Her parents, along with the help of her uncle, had to come up with the $10,000 shortfall to get rid of the used car. Don't be fooled like this young woman was. It's time to take the offensive and demand payment of the $390,000 in grant money that we were unlawfully denied. It's time to ask the Superior Court to clarify that we are not a rapid transit community, and it's time for our town to come together and find some answers to our fiscal challenges. Agreeing to 2,500 units is not the solution. Thank you so much.
Thank you. You're only 240.
I talk fast.
I know, I noticed. Beverly Ross Denny. Good evening.
Beverly Ross Denny, 107 Columbine Road, Town Meeting Member, Precinct 2. Good evening.
You may want to bring that a little closer, yeah.
Beverly Ross Denny, 107 Columbine Road, Town Meeting Member, Precinct 2. Good evening. I had the opportunity to review the Select Board packet dated January 28th, where Town Administrator Milano took the time to detail the multiple scenarios for both the override and projected property tax for several years. I was surprised to see that the difference between the property tax for a $7 million override, which you shared at the last Select Board meeting, and the proposed $10.5 million override that would fund a level service budget, probably the new literacy curriculum, and buy us a couple of years without having to have another override, would cost the average Milton home, which is a little over $1 million, an additional $392, which is essentially $98 per quarter for the purposes of getting our property tax bill. I think this is a small financial sacrifice for our town to deliver quality services. And in fact, I believe that when we looked at the 3-year projections for what our costs would be, the override actually needs to be a little more than that, probably closer to 11.5. I moved to Milton for the schools, but I found so much more here. I remember the police officers who promptly responded to my calls when I needed their help, and Chief King, who met with me when my neighbor and I were harassed at a public meeting. I would pay $392 for my neighbors to receive that same response. When the Who's It Club was burning right across the street from my home and could have burned my home, our brave firefighters came and put that blaze out. I would pay $392 to make sure that my neighbors have that. During the many storms we've had this winter, the DPW staff consistently treated and cleared the roads. I would pay $392 a year for that. Our librarians who curate and maintain an amazing collection of books, the library of things and artwork, they do all of this work and welcome the young people into a space where they're safe and host many community events. I would pay $392 more for that. And our schools that educated, counseled, encouraged my 3 kids and thousands of others, I would gladly pay $392 for that. And I think I'm not the only one that feels that way.
30 seconds. 30 seconds.
I'm getting more time. I'm sure you're generous enough
Well, go ahead.
to
We'll
loan
keep
me
going.
the extra time. Milton has a structural deficit, and we cannot afford to cut our way out of it. Health insurance alone will increase at the rate higher than the 2.5% levy. So no matter what we do, $7 million is not enough. I did see your response to Ms. Talbot's question about funding our schools. And essentially, Dr. Pavlicek, who endorsed you and has been a friend of yours many years, resigned in response to what happened in FY25. I don't think that the schools should be punished because we have many teachers, we have many officers, we have so many valuable civil servants that actually deserve better.
Thank you.
And I would hate to lay them off for
Thank you.
$392.
Renisha Talbot, Sylvia? Did I get the, oh. Silva, I'm sorry. 2 weeks in a row. Good evening.
Renisha Silva Talbot, Precinct 2, Town Meeting Member. You know, I'm here again 2 weeks in a row, and because just last week, I noticed your same smug behavior, and just the same way you dismissed the email that I sent to you. And here you sit up here rubbing your face and rubbing your brow, and it's kind of more of the same thing. And I find it really insulting to your constituents, because what parents and residents raise legitimate concerns, and when you just mock them, like last June when there were so many parents that turned out for the school board, and you said, oh, they must think that we're giving out something free. No, all those parents were here for their children's education. They care about a new school. That's why they were here. And on top of that, your recent claims that Milton residents would prefer budget cuts over an override is particularly troubling and defies logic. It would mean larger class sizes, exceeding 30 students, losing valued teachers, diminishing the educational experience that makes Milton special. And people moved here especially for the schools. And you said it yourself that the taxpayers aren't stupid, and you are absolutely right. We can see clearly the results of politics, and that's what this is, this calculated inaction. It's maneuvering. That's what politics are, in case you need clarification on that. While the school board does share responsibility for our current situation, it's important to note that most of the school committee and the Milton Public Leadership teams are relatively new to their roles. They've shown genuine commitment to addressing these challenges and finding solutions. What we need now is for the school board to work collaboratively with select board, because select board has a big say in what happens with this override. We need the opportunity to vote for either level funding or an increase that will maintain our educational standards. As both select board chair and state representative, you hold a unique position of influence, Chair Wells. You could be advocating for Milton's interests at both local and state levels. Instead, you appear content to watch our schools decline. This isn't about education, it's about our community's future. Families choose Milton specifically for its schools, pay premium prices for homes with expectation of excellent education. Your current leadership approach threatens both our children's
30
education
seconds.
and our property values. We need to move past this politics. Our community deserves the opportunity to vote on a full override that will actually address our schools' needs. Thank you.
Thank you. I learned a new word today. Thank you. Denny Swenson. Shh, please.
This gentleman needs some manners talking, that's all.
Hold on. Listen, if we could all, look at, you can throw whatever rocks you want at me or at us. I only say this to all of you, and you can all have your ideas, but this is the place we all call home. I say this all the time, and I say this as someone who spent the majority of my life protecting the citizens of this community in every neighborhood in this community. Let's at least be civil enough to listen to each other tonight. Please. Thank you. I'm sorry.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair Wells, and thank you, Select Board members. I understand you're receiving, Denny Swenson, 65 Green Street, Town Meeting Member, Precinct 5. I understand you're receiving requests that you sign off on documents certifying compliance to MBTA zoning guidelines that haven't been promulgated yet. That would be a terrible idea. Milton has won a groundbreaking ruling from the SJC that the guidelines are not legally effective nor enforceable. That means we now have a critically important opportunity during the repromulgation process to seek changes to the guidelines that would make them better to serve our town. My message to the Select Board is simple. Please do not capitulate on this. Your constituents worked tirelessly to get here. Hundreds walked in the cold December snow and rain to gather the signatures needed to secure a referendum. They gathered nearly 3,000 signatures in 1 week, a testament to how strongly people felt about not going along with a 2,500 unit plan. Over 5,100 voters showed up at the polls to reject that plan. Please do not forget them now. If you were to sign off on guidelines that haven't been promulgated, you would be effectively forfeiting Milton's ability to challenge critical issues with the guidelines, such as rapid transit classification, at this important stage when we have won the right to be heard. Moreover, the state's effort to require a town to swear compliance to guidelines that have not been promulgated raises serious legal questions. This is the time to be working through the issues with the state, not throwing in the towel. If you are worried about the costs, we can secure less expensive attorneys. But please remember, Milton has no plan on how to pay for the infrastructure costs of tens of millions of dollars for the state plan. Prudence requires developing a plan and how to pay for it that a majority can support before agreeing to comply with regulations the state is required by law to still be writing. Please remember that the state owes Milton $140,000 for the seawall study and $250,000 for the municipal fiber grant. We will need legal representation probably to get those monies back. The planning board has spent many hours crafting a thoughtful action plan and appendix. Please respect their work as an elected body knowledgeable in planning and zoning matters, and put forward the planning board action plan and appendix as the town's plan. Now is the time to honor the voters and your fellow elected officers and work toward a win-win solution with the state. I sincerely thank you for your service, and I thank you for your consideration.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Joe Curran?
9:20. Good evening. Joe Curran, Grafton Ave. Today I wish to discuss the proposed East Milton Square mixed-use overlay district, a pivotal initiative here in our community. It is often discussed as a revitalization effort, but I feel that word is misleading as it is an enhancement to the vibrant district. An example of revitalization might be the effort in Quincy Center that transformed what was known as Shopperstown, USA, to a blend of commercial and cultural spaces. The East Milton proposal is the culmination of years of meticulous planning, community engagement, and strategic visioning, a district towards enhancing the vibrancy and functionality of East Milton Square. The journey began with the town-wide master plan in 2015, which identified a focus on East Milton Square as a key objective. The plan advocated for retail, dining, and public amenities to foster a dynamic business district. Subsequent studies, including the 2019 Urban Land Institute Technical Assistance Panel report, known as the Looking Forward report of East Milton Square, reinforced these recommendations. They emphasize building community consensus, refining our vision, and developing the tools necessarily in the vision. The proposed overlay district, designed to encourage development that aligns with our community aspirations, includes key objective: enhancing walkability, improving pedestrian infrastructure and safety and convenience and movement for all, guiding investments, directing commercial investments to strengthen our local community, fostering community identity, cultivating a distinct sense of place that reflects the unique character of East Milton Square, leveraging private investment and utilizing private development and community amenities while mitigating potential impacts. The overlay district allows property owners the flexibility to develop according to existing zoning regulations or opt in for the new mixed-use provisions. This approach maintains the current zoning framework while offering an incentive for cohesiveness and coordinating development.
30 seconds, Joe.
Okay. In conclusion, the East Milton Square Mixed Overlay District needs to be presented to the citizens of East Milton Square. I understand it's going to be put on the May town meeting, and I just want to make sure that the residents of East Milton who have spent many years listening and suggesting changes to that plan are heard before it goes before town meeting.
Thank you. Jennifer Owen. Good evening. Good evening.
Good evening, everyone. Janet Ferone, Town Meeting Member, Precinct 2, 71 Central Avenue, Milton. I'm thrilled tonight to see so many families, children, people coming out to support education. Education is really a priceless gift to our students, to our town, to the world. I'm here in a little bit different perspective. I'm a senior citizen. I do not have any children in the schools. My child is 25, so it's been a long time since he was in the Milton schools. But I'm here as a senior citizen, as a longtime educator, 33 years in the Boston schools, as well as currently at Curry College. And I can't stress enough how important education is and how important education is to Milton. Show of hands, who moved here because of the schools? I mean, that says it all. We're here in a town, our property values are high. Yes, some of the taxes are high, but I would rather pay for taxes and not lose money when I sell my house because property values are down. I moved here from Dorchester. I still have many friends there, including several realtors. Saw them the other night, and they've been telling me this even before, that it used to be automatic. When people in Dorchester wanted to move on up, they moved to Milton for the schools. Now what they're telling me is that's gone. It's not an automatic. People are looking elsewhere. Needham is mentioned. I do some work in Needham through Curry. I see what the schools look like, the spacious, the facilities, and it's heartbreaking to see what's happening in Milton. So as I said, nobody wants to pay more taxes, but I would rather pay to keep Milton a high-quality education town. All the hands you saw in the room, if those people are gone, people who come here because of the schools, we won't even be able to sell our homes because people will not be moving here. But having said that, I still want to just say that what we need for our students and our families and for the people working hard in our schools,
30 seconds.
we're already coming off the negative impact of COVID. We've all seen the reports of the achievement situation. So if we don't fund our schools, we really have just given up the most priceless thing. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. So this will be our final speaker, and I believe, is it Mackenzie Bigby? Did I say that right?
Yeah, actually,
And these are your,
my daughters and me. Can we squeeze into 3 minutes?
Sure.
Both of us? Okay.
yeah, you're gonna, we'll give you 3:15, because that's what's left. You manage it how you want.
I'll go first? I'll go first. Okay.
Good evening.
Lindsay Bigby, 591 Blue Hills Parkway. This is Mackenzie Bigby and Michaela Bigby. She's 7 and she's 6. When I see the reports of a budget at 9.6 being at-level service, I want to highlight that at-level is what the schools are now, but it's not appropriate, and it's significantly below the level that we need. These students whose needs, there are students whose needs are not being met, and there are teachers teaching a literacy curriculum that is not up to date to the state standards. In the last month, the same teachers who are hiding under desks protecting my children in their classrooms for a lockdown were also told that there's a freeze and they don't have any more copy paper. There was a man with a gun less than 30 feet from the school, and these teachers did everything they could. And now we're cutting all their supplies. We have some of the best teachers in the country, and through the pandemic, in the last few years, they have been working their tails off to provide incredible educational experiences to children in our community with little to nothing. spending money out of their own pockets, but they are tired, and we have unfairly pushed them to the max. These teachers and students deserve to feel as if we as a community support and value them. We should value them as much as we value our children and our grandchildren. They are the heart of our schools and the community, and they deserve at least level support. An investment in our schools is one of the strongest investments we can make. So many people move here because of our schools. According to the information that was provided on the January 7th, 2005 Select Board meeting, the $7 million override, which is significantly below even our at-level budget, would force us to cut approximately 35 teachers and grow our classroom size to over 30 children when they are already bursting at the seams. This would significantly reduce the quality of education in our children and would drastically hurt the level of special education services able to provide. It would be ludicrous to continue to pay $70,000 to $100,000 per student that we are sending out of town because we cannot provide the services. In addition to all the legal settlements that we will be facing because we're not supporting the children. An $11.5 million override will allow us to appropriately staff our school, maintain our overcrowded and barely tolerable class sizes, and it looks like it would be approximately $65 or $56 per month difference from the $7 million budget to our homeowners. A reduction in teachers and services presents itself as saving taxpayers money, but in learning how the system works, it's evident that approving a lower budget would increase the amount of kids that would need to send out a district, therefore costing the taxpayers more money in the end. The town has already used $250,000 of our educational budget to pay for the lawyers' fees as a consequence to the results of the vote of the MBTA zoning law. We have to stop under-equipping our schools and expecting our teachers to provide top-notch education. With the current political climate, there's a push for people who misuse the term DEI to say the words diversity, equity, inclusion. When you're deciding this budget, I would like you to instead instead of thinking about money, think about approximately how many teachers aren't worth our investment, how many students don't deserve the services that are required through their IEP, how many kids don't deserve to attend a neighborhood school because we won't fund the services needed for them to stay here.
Thank you.
We have a ridiculous amount of, excuse me?
Thank you.
Okay. Can I let them read? They're like less than 30 seconds.
Go
Is that
ahead.
okay? They're very quick. Go ahead, Mackenzie.
Should I time it? I won't.
Are you feeling shy? Why don't you say the first line? Real quick. Go ahead. My name? Okay. I'm going to read it for her. She's feeling a little
That's
shy.
fine. That's
My name is Michaela Bigby, and I am in kindergarten at Tucker. I want to thank the grown-ups who are fighting for our schools. I want to grow up and do big things in our world. Please help our schools so we can grow up and do great things and be great humans. Michaela. Mackenzie's feeling shy too, so I'm going to read it for her too. My name is Mackenzie Bigby, and I'm a second grader at Tucker. Please vote for a budget that is enough for all of my friends who need extra help so that they can get it. Our teachers are like family, and I hope you vote so that they will still teach at Tucker and show them that you love them too. Part of being a Tucker Tiger is learning how to take care of each other. So I hope tonight, when you vote, you do it the Tucker way. Thank you.
Thank you. So that's going to conclude public speak. Let's draw a line. And I'm going to move to item number 3, which is a joint working session between the school committee and the select board with two things: a discussion update of the fiscal year 2025 school budget situation and a discussion update of the fiscal year 2026 budget. I will tell you, we will not be, I know this agenda says this, we will not be voting on scheduling an override amount tonight. That won't happen tonight, but that will happen at a later time. So, Madam Chair, you bring who you want. It's up to you.
I'm on the Zoom. Is it possible
yes.
to get elevated to share my screen, please?
So, yeah, but I'm doing it. So could, just for the millions in TV land, Chair Carol, could you just ask everyone, starting with yourself, could just introduce themselves?
Yes, absolutely.
Oh, they brought nameplates.
We did, someone gave these to us, and that was very kind. Thank you. So, yes, we will introduce ourselves, and thank you for having us. I'm Lizzie Carroll. I'm the chair of the school committee.
Regina Watts, interim assistant superintendent for teaching and learning.
Thank you.
Anna Varghese, school committee member.
Selena Miranda, School Committee Vice Chair.
Doctor?
Peter Burrows, Superintendent. Mark Loring, School Committee Member.
Hi, I'm Catherine Blake. I'm the Assistant Superintendent for Finance and Operations.
My name is Bao Chu, School Committee Member.
Amanda Serio, school committee member.
So if I may have a second before you start? So at our last meeting, Chair Carroll was here, I believe, Amanda. Mark may have been here. I made a comment, we talked about several things in the schools, and I made a comment about an incident that happened probably 15 or 20 years ago where it was a negative incident that happened in the Milton Public Schools. And in that, I named the title of the position that the person held at that time, and that person wound up resigning. I no way, in no way, shape, or form was insinuating that the current person who holds that title was Catherine Blake, who I met with the other day, who I have all the confidence in the world in, was that person. And as she knows, when I went to visit her, and as you know, Chair Carroll, I apologize publicly if that hurt you or directed at you, and because I do know you have been the one person in this mess that we're in, because there's no other way to put it, it's that have been extremely helpful to all of us in this, and I thank you for that, and I apologize publicly. And I told you I was going to do this, and if, whether people like me or not, good or bad, I'm a person of my words, so I apologize publicly to you for that. Now you can begin, Chair Carroll.
Thank you, and I want to begin by just expressing our appreciation for this opportunity to be here with you this evening. It's a really important opportunity for us to share information, to answer questions that you might have, and hopefully to engage in some discussion about the options that we have before us. We do, as the school committee, seek clarity from you as the select board on what path we are taking forward as a town. We need to be able to communicate clearly with our community, and we need to understand what trade-offs we are needing to make as we proceed towards decision-making around the budgets. And so we thank you again for just having us and allowing us to post this as a joint meeting. You know, you didn't have to do that. I do appreciate the opportunity to have our entire team here. What we are prepared to do is offer hopefully a rather brief presentation, but we will want to be thorough with the information that we share. That presentation will be offered. I will begin. We will have Dr. Burrows, Finance Chair Mark Loring, and Assistant Superintendent Katie Blake sharing the information. Following that, all of us are available to help answer your questions and to engage in some dialogue to support you as you move towards your vote. Glad to hear that that won't be happening tonight, so you'll have more time to sort of process the information. But we also do understand that, you know, we are facing some urgency to arrive at some decisions as well. I want to underscore before we begin that we are really interested in protecting funding for all the departments across town. Several of the commenters spoke to this. We are here representing the schools. in the context of our great town of Milton. So I don't want to begin this MPS budget update without just highlighting that piece. With that said, though, I am the chair of the school committee, here with my colleagues, with our leadership of the district, and we are here to advocate for our kids and our staff. A lot of work has gone into this presentation. We've been discussing our budget since November in our public meetings, and we are really thankful for this opportunity to bring the discussion here to you. We are going to sort of touch upon FY25 and where we're at with that before we go into any depth on our FY26 budget request. But I have to begin by just laying out what we see as the options. I'm heartened, I will say, by your conversations over your past meetings that it does seem like we are in agreement that the town of Milton is in need of an operational override for FY26 for next year. This is something that we have discussed for the past couple of years. We all know that it's been overdue. And so that is a good starting place, I think. That said, when we think about what override we're moving towards, a key question is what is the number, and that's what you all will be needing to decide. You have three options. You have an override that provides funding for level service and needs. You have an override that provides funding for level service, or you have an override that provides partial funding below level service. We're going to be talking about what the implications of these three options are. I want to just remind us of our goals, and I believe these are shared goals. These are our goals. I think they're your goals too. We want to provide our residents with a return on their investment. If we're asking people to raise their own taxes to even consider doing that, we need to make sure that they feel like they receive value for that additional investment in our town. We want to protect our town services and staff. I really want to underscore protect our staff. We're going to be talking about the implications of partial funding and what it would mean to take cuts. And I'd like us all to remember as we have this conversation that what we're really talking about are people and their jobs and their lives and their livelihoods and their families. So let's just make sure we keep that in mind. We're protecting our town services and staff to preserve the quality of life, which is why we all live in this town. The final goal is to avoid another operational override for the next 5 years, and we share that as a goal. So that is another consideration that you'll be hearing as we move forward. Before we dive into any depth on the three options and what they look like in our actual budget requests, I'm going to hand it over to Dr. Burrows to speak a little bit about FY25, our current year, and where we are with this.
Great, thank you. Great to be back in front of you all. I'm going to talk a little bit about FY25, the work that we're currently doing, and talk about the steps that we're taking to close this gap. As you all know, we ended last year in a pretty challenging place. I am so appreciative of Nick Milano, Amy Dexter, and the entire team, Joanna as well, who have worked with us last year at a really challenging time to help us get to the finish line with our FY24 budget. As you all know, that put us in a pretty challenging position in FY25, where we had to spend down all of our reserves in FY24 to close that budget. We have been in FY25, and you heard some comments earlier in public comment about some of the challenges that we're experiencing in schools this year as we're working to contain costs.
Use the microphone closer to you for the people at home.
To contain costs, to address some of the practices that we had in place previously that led us to the outcomes in FY24. So we feel like we're on very stable ground now in terms of knowing where we are, where we're headed. I'm going to share a little bit about what we're doing. You can go to the next slide.
Please turn your cell phones off, please.
I guess I feel that way about FY25 sometimes too.
See, I just try to bring a little humor, and people don't understand why I do this. Just, go ahead, sorry.
Okay.
That was not me.
So we are looking at any and all options to end the year without, we're projecting a deficit. We've have a current purchase order freeze. We have a hiring freeze, so I've listed some of the positions that we haven't filled. These are positions that have vacated this year that we have not hired back. There are a number of other positions that we haven't posted that we would typically post for that we've had to pull services from one classroom and potentially share it across two classrooms. So we've had to do those kinds of things to address this shortfall. We are allocating a portion of our custodial salaries to our food service account. Our food service account is a separate account, so it actually has a fairly large fund balance. We are also reducing some of our consolidated facilities purchase orders. We have some offsets we're using to address this gap as well. We are comfortable with that $550,000 number. There's still additional funds in those accounts, but we don't want to overexpend those. So that's kind of where we sit right now. Next slide. We are working, our substitute line is one of the three things. The other two are special ed, transportation, and utilities this year. That are the three kind of main budget lines that are significantly over from what was budgeted. So we are looking at sub-coverage right now and having people leave current positions where they would be working on curriculum development, things like that. They are now covering for classes. So just to help paint the picture, it's everyone is pitching in, but it is challenging. We are waiting on some circuit breaker supplemental funding, and we don't have a number on that yet. We are also looking at rescinding our FY26 capital requests for end user devices and rooftop units. Those are two capital requests that were made for FY26 that would require us to get approval at town meeting. This is something I'm talking about with Nick in terms of a way to help to close that gap as well. So after
This is for next year. This is for this year we're in now? Okay. All right, go ahead. Yeah, because we haven't even voted next year's. Okay. Go ahead, keep going.
Yeah. So after all of these different initiatives, we would be at roughly $650,000. So it's taking it down from where it was before. This number is very fluid, meaning we are constantly getting, recently we had a few POs come in from some special ed costs that we're having to now respond to. So this number is not a static number, but we are continuing to bring it down and do everything we can to close this year whole. And as I said, we're committed to doing everything in our power to close this. We recognize that the focus on FY25 right now is taking away a little bit from our focus on FY26, and that should really be our focus to get back on level ground. Without reserves, in a typical year, if we had our reserves, we wouldn't be talking about any of this. We would just be going status quo. And the fact that we have absolutely no wiggle room now puts us in a pretty challenging place.
Questions? You all right before we, questions by the members? Ms. Bradley.
Thanks. I'm confused about the $466,000 that you're taking from capital and putting towards an operating. I didn't think we could move capital money to do that. So walk me through how we're going to make that happen.
That's my question as well.
I think the point is they've submitted those requests as for fiscal 26, and nothing's been appropriated, but it's been typically we'll do about $400,000 in end user devices for the subsequent year. It's a free cash appropriation. It's up to the town meeting to appropriate it or not. I think our perspective has been try to keep them separate, capital and operating
Right.
separate. However, it came up last year as well.
Right.
So take the 466 from capital and plug it, that they were requesting for FY '26, and plug it in for FY '25
As free cash.
It's free.
as
you
free
see-
cash. So it's going to come out of our free cash.
Correct.
I got you now. Okay.
So-
Instead of spending it next year on Chromebooks,
Yep,
the
gotcha.
request is, say, we'll drop that request and let's spend it this year on other stuff, I guess, if I'm hearing
of
that
free cash.
correctly.
You good?
I'm good now.
So just a thought that so this is the Chromebooks that we're about to approve Thursday morning in the 26 budget, so we're gonna remove that from this one, but you're gonna use the free cash, because if it's bonded, bonded wouldn't give you
Yeah.
any money,
Right.
but it's not
Right.
gonna,
Just it. That's
bonded money isn't real money, it's spread
Right.
out, it's.
monopoly money.
And we typically
yeah.
fund it as free
Good way of looking at.
Right.
All right, I get it, that's,
Yeah.
okay, so,
That
but
was
that still
throwing me
leaves you
too.
at, at a negative 650?
Yeah.
Is the number on the bottom here?
Yeah.
Yep.
So my million-dollar question,
$650,000 question?
yes, what's the chance you're at zero on June 30th? And the frowns tell me I don't see
I'm
any
gonna go
smiles, I
with
see
no.
nothing but grim chins, because that becomes, then it comes to us to have to, good, I'm
Yeah,
thinking
no,
of
I,
anybody.
no, I mean, it is, as Peter said, slightly a moving target. We are obviously not able to just kind of close doors and really stop. There are things that continue to come up in terms of new identified student needs, right, new costs associated with that. I think Katie is doing a tremendous job of controlling and shrinking as much as
agree.
possible and trying to keep this number manageable. I think, just to be transparent, within the Finance Committee meeting we had on Wednesday, we were debating whether or not to share these numbers at the public meeting yesterday, and we were a little hesitant because we don't want to overpromise and underdeliver. That is like the biggest concern we have. I think we feel good about these. It's going to require constant vigilance. And in order to close it further, the things that are currently being implemented are being felt by our teachers. They're being felt by our kids, right? Every parent knows this when they get the emails about like, hey, there's homework packets are online this week, right? There's not even paper. I called one of the schools today, and the assistant principal was serving as the principal and the assistant principal and the receptionist because they don't have coverage. So like these things are real and impactful, but to continue to cut is going to be more so. And so we need to do that. I think as the school committee, we're not satisfied at not having that number be at zero. And so what we have asked the school department to provide to us is what are the things that would need to be cut to bring it to zero, so we can discuss that, so we can look at that. And at that point, again, it could be a possibility that those cuts are significant in terms of their impact on our families and our students, and we'd prefer to come back here to have a further conversation about how we can close
So
that
last
collection.
year, at the end of FY '24, we came into money to cover the $750,000 that was short. What was that money from, Nick? Was that part of the Chapter 70 that we got extra last year?
So
You
they
talking
were-
about what came in July, like
So
after we were
yeah,
already in
to
this
cover
year?
that's what I'm thinking of. So if we got that money last year, God, I've been doing this budget for too long. If we got that money last year, then there's no reason why, or maybe there's a reason why we wouldn't be getting it this year, but could we use that to plug them?
But you don't know what that
Two
is yet.
different,
You
I
don't know
think
what it is.
there's two different things that happened as the budget was being finalized. There's, one thing happened as the budget was being finalized and going to town meeting last year. And then there was the request at the end of the fiscal year around helping close off the deficit.
Yep.
So item number one was going into town meeting, the House Ways and Means budget came out with an
That was it.
increased Chapter 70 number, and state aid generally actually went up. And based on that increase, there were amendments to the budget at town meeting that
was it.
funded additional monies to the school department, but also to the firefighter contract that came out of the arbitration award.
That's
So there are a
right.
couple of different changes
That's right.
that came with additional state aid. The other piece that changed at the end of last year was what Dr. Burrows referred to in terms of the deficit at the end of the year. That was, with the select board's approval, costs were charged to federal funding, to the ARPA funds.
That's right.
It was about $415,000 at year end, and in July, I think was select board's July meeting.
Yep.
And those were use it or lose it ARPA funds, weren't they?
Correct.
They needed to be incurred by December of 2024.
And we had actually put them for something else, the housing.
did.
Yeah.
And then they never used it, so we had to use it by the end of the year. So
Right.
that's what we used it for.
And we don't want to be in that position again. We
No,
it
so
just- and
sorry,
we don't
I
have
was
the
trying to
money this
find
year,
money.
we just don't have the money to do that, and so if you, the more you communicate to Nick and Amy where things are, because unlike town departments where the town administrator can move money at the end of the last 90 days between, police, fire, libraries, DPW, we can't do that without an article or some other method, and you don't need me or any of us to tell you where we're at in the reserve fund right now, where we are, like, money-wise. So I think, I heard the number, I watched last night, I heard the number last night, and so that's, I'll pray for zero. But, and I know, I get that. And, we're not placing, we're in a tough position here, and it's not like we have money to just, so that's all. We want to know as much as we can about where we are right now, which is the world we're living in, which is this year's operational budget, and then hear about moving forward. So I'll give you, I knew we were going to have to, because as soon as I saw that, I'm like, well,
Yep.
we can't let that go, we got to find out, like, we don't want to know on
But it's a less
June
number than it was
15th,
last year.
it's 550, like, just,
Like, we're gonna keep trying, also keep things in perspective, which is last year it was a bigger number. We're unraveling a lot of things. This year it's a smaller number. Maybe we will find a magic door. I often talk about my money tree in the backyard.
Did you plant that
in
thing yet?
snow right now.
It's under snow. But I'm not saying that it's over yet for your 650. There's gotta be something. We gotta be able to find something. So,
And I think you guys still have some slides to go through, or no?
Yeah, so
Is
go
that
ahead.
it?
I just want,
Yeah,
we
that-
wanted to get,
this
there was
is-
just, we had to get to that before
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
kept going.
No, I appreciate that, and that's just, so this is FY '25. And
Right.
the bulk of our time, we want to just spend really providing texture around FY '26, so that you understand how to weigh the costs and benefits of the different options that you have before you. So, Mark, you're going to start this part, right?
Yeah, so as we look at SY '26, again, Katie has been doing a fantastic job kind of helping us, warrant committee members, public in general, in kind of the public meetings that we've had, laying out the things that are drivers for our budget. We know the SY '26 number of 6.4 million for level service is a high number. None of us take that lightly. We all understand that. We would like that number to be less, because that means the needs for our kids are less, and the likelihood of us filling that and giving our kids and our staff what they need would be easier. These are just some of the things that influence what the budget numbers are on a given year. Obviously, salaries, offsets such as circuit breaker funding we get from the state or from other areas. Mandates is a big one. That's what we talked about with SY '25. That's what we talked about with SY '24. That continues into SY '26. Things that we are required to provide whether we want to or not, and those are places that are a significant portion of our budget that we cannot cut in any situation. We have to pay for it. The other one is obviously inflation, where inflation has averaged 4% since the last override. We know that annual increases have been closer to 3%, right? That is a significant gap over a 9-year period where we haven't had overrides, and we know inflation has been even higher of late. And within school-specific expenses such as transportation, out-of-district placement, special education, those are well above 4%. So all those things are things that are consistently hitting our budget. They're things that are hitting every school department's budget across the state. It's talked about very widely. We are unfortunately not an exception to that as much as we wish we were. So these are things that are driving that number in order to keep up with the cost of providing the programming we are providing today, what it will cost us to provide it tomorrow. So getting back a bit to what Lizzie was laying out at the beginning in terms of what we see as the conversation with you around and the decision you ultimately will make around how we move forward as a town with the override. And the first option we'd like to start with is kind of level service plus needs. So Peter has spent the last 18 months kind of going through, doing a listening and learning tour, creating an implementation plan and an action plan to figure out what are the things our school department needs to help it take the step forward. We brought in a new superintendent. We were excited coming to this year about the possibility of investing in the vision and the opportunities as he laid it out for our kids. We know that is challenging with where we currently sit as a town with the size of the level service requests going to next year. But we still think it is really important that we share this and we talk about this with our neighbors, with the residents of this town, because we think they are smart enough to be able to hear and discern for themselves what we need to fund and what we don't. And so one of the things we've talked about within a needs budget, if that was a possibility, would be things like our ELA curriculum. That is a high need of ours. It was work that our ELA director was working on last year to kind of, with a working group to figure out what would our curriculum be. We were excited about funding that this coming year. Other positions, as you see up there, additional professional development needed to implement the ELA curriculum, student supports, additional teaching positions for overcrowded kindergarten classes, HR director, so on. It was about 1.4 million in total. You can go to the next slide. This is what we talked about kind of back in November or December as we were looking at kind of our needs budget as presented by the school district of the things that would be really helpful to, again, continue to boost the academic experience of our students forward and support our staff in supporting our kids.
What's that?
I
Ms. Bradley has a question.
missed at the beginning what you said your level budget number was. Did you say 64 million?
No.
I didn't hear it.
6.4 is the increase. We'll get to that
Is
next.
the increase, what is, I want to go, that's not what I want to ask. What I want to ask is, what is your level budget? So your budget right now for FY '25 is what amount?
The
Total budget?
Approved total budget. Approved.
67 million is our SY
67
25
million
budget.
is your FY '25. And then usually you guys get 2.5%, 3% as an increase. I mean, last year it was 9%, but we're not going to talk about that. So does
She's
that?
talking bargaining.
So does that 67 million, the numbers that you're now about to talk about, does that 67 million as your bottom line include what we already would give you as a percentage increase?
The 67 million is what our budget is this year.
Right,
And,
but do you understand what I'm saying, Katie?
so-
Okay, so when you're talking about these numbers, do they include the 3% that you would already get? No. So these are just flat everything. So it's not as, what I'm trying to say is it's not as we need $100,000. We might only need $70,000 because you would have already gotten the 3%. That's what I'm trying to figure out, okay? So we're starting at 67, and now we're adding 1.4.
Yeah, 1.4 would be for the list of needs that are up here.
Got you. Okay, thank you. Sorry,
Next slide.
thank you.
No problem.
Can I ask
Go ahead,
quick
go ahead.
question?
Mr. Zoll, absolutely.
On the previous slide, so, Mr. Loring, you alluded to the ELA curriculum being a sort of high need. I think it's like number one on your list. Can you just say a little bit why that's, like, how do you guys identify what a high need is? Because me, I wouldn't know, like, a kindergarten teacher seems like just as high of a need as ELA.
Yeah, and I think in some ways that's why we've talked about ELA curriculum for a number of years, and we haven't moved forward with it. We have done a lot of work in preparing for it, and I think as we look at this coming year and we've basically, it's been about a 3-year runway to purchasing new curricula and moving forward. And because we've done so much work and we're poised to move forward, and our current curricula does not align with best practice. It's something that our community has talked about a lot. It's something every time I'm going into a school and talking with parents about teaching and learning, it seems like it comes up. So it's a kind of a broad nationwide conversation too. I think we've been waiting for too long, and I think we have so much expertise in our district, and we need to provide these materials to really help people run.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair, may I?
Sure.
Just that, I think when I heard it as it's a one-time cost, but is it actually a recurring cost? It's one time.
The
'Cause it's
1.4 is
Yeah.
one time?
The 250,000 on that list.
Yeah.
is a
Because it's the
one-time
curriculum
expense.
materials.
Okay, all right. That's
Okay.
helpful. I didn't catch that.
Good? Good?
Yep.
Okay,
I appreciate you stopping me.
no problem. We gotta, I mean,
Thank you.
this is the time, this is why we did this.
And again, just sharing kind of a year two, again, what we asked Peter to present to us is think about, again, how do we sustain about this and think about this over time, given the expectation that we had kind of going to the budget process, that this likely would be an override year and would be the year to be thinking about this, right? Let's make sure we're planning kind of more than 1 year at a time. This is the list of kind of year two needs, which, as you can see, gets to about $822,000. So again, when we talk about kind of the total needs that were presented by the district to the school committee over a 2-year period, it is closer to that kind of $2 million number. So we think about what would be the impact of receiving a needs-based budget of any level. We'd be able to address kind of current challenges and pain points within our community, whether that's the ELA curriculum, as Dr. Burrows said, whether that's adding additional transportation, which has come up consistently from residents in East Milton, West Milton, all over. It's come up a lot. We would be able to expand needed services for students. We'd be able to add additional positions that support our students and our staff. Obviously, the downside of a needs-based budget is the greater cost to our residents and our fellow taxpayers in order to fund that. So we understand that is the cost, and those are the trade-offs that you consider as you think about what the budget override number is. So that brings us to the second option, which would be a level service budget. And this is, Aaron, kind of the $6.4 million up here, which is a 9.44% increase. That is the amount needed to maintain current service into next year. That is the cost. And that includes cost of living increases for obviously all employees as the part of kind of every union and every department. It also includes the adjustments to kind of the line items that we are currently experiencing significant issues with substitutes, with utilities, with special ed transportation, adjusting those line items to reflect the current realities of what those things actually are costing the district to provide those services that kids are receiving today. It includes inflationary adjustments to make sure that we are compensating for those. One example of that is transportation. We are assuming an 8% increase in the cost of transportation service because that is what the market is coming in at. Transportation costs are not increasing at 2.5% a year. They are increasing significantly. The last bullet, I think, is a really important one because $800,000 out of the $6.4 million is just to push some of the use of circuit breaker, the state funding for special ed services, onto the town's expenditure line. And the reason to do that is to start to rebuild our reserves within circuit breaker. So by only using $2 million in circuit breaker next year instead of 2.8, we're able to bank $800,000 for SY27 and then continue to do that until we get to what would be best practice, which is we are not using the current year's circuit breaker, we're using last year's circuit breaker, and we always have a year's balance within that, so that if something were to happen, such as special ed transportation spiking over $1 million this year, we have a way to cover that without coming back to the town, without needing town meeting to allocate free cash, without needing an override to cover it in the following year, et cetera, et cetera.
Quick question.
Yes.
So you pretty much emptied that account last year, am I correct? But if my memory's correct, that's an account that was like, took years, like our stave caps, like you get. And so from what you took out of it completely, are you trying to get it all back in 1 year? Or so how many years do you project to get it back to where it was?
Well, the plan right now is to put back $800,000 in it for next year.
How much
and that
was in
would,
it before you went into it last year? What was the reserve? Do you know?
I believe they took $1 million. There was $1 million in there, is my recollection of what was taken out to cover the FY24 deficit. So
Okay.
the goal would be to get it to the $2.8 million. We know doing that in a single year is too much of a load on the town's budget. That's not feasible. And so thinking about how we chunk that within a way that gets us there within a reasonable time frame, that's where the $800,000 number came in. Again, a real core of what we're trying to do here with the level service budget is to present to the town a budget that is sustainable. We do not want to be in the position we put ourselves in FY24. We do not want to be in the position we've put ourselves in this year, where we have line items that just are not representative of what the actual costs are to serve our students. We want to be clear with the town. We want to be clear with you, town meeting, warrant committee, everybody about what it costs to provide the services we are providing today. And so, and how we make that sustainable over multiple years to be responsible with the dollars that are entrusted to the schools. So that is why we believe strongly there's been conversations between the town and the school department about that particular line item. Should we reduce that? Should we eliminate that just to shrink them out? Because 6.4 is a very large number. It's a reasonable ask. But we believe strongly that that would be a disservice to kind of the long-term stability of the town's budget and the school department's budget.
Go ahead, Ms. Bradley.
Thank you. I actually think that over the last 2 years, we've dipped into that sped reserve more. And I think that more was used at one point, I think before you were on the school committee. I feel like I remember this happening a few years ago, maybe even 3 or 4 years ago, where they really went in and sliced that. I think the 800,000 is prudent and definitely needed. SPED it's one of those wild cards that you get, and you never know what's going to happen. So I think that that's a really smart thing to do. I look at the budget a little bit differently because there is always an increase, right? We always get an increase every year. So when I'm presented with this budget, it's not, to me, because my mind works crazily, it's not a 9.4% increase. To me, it's like a 6.5% increase, right? So if you do it that way, in my little head, you're down to, really only needing, you're subtracting 2.1 million, so you're down to 71.3 as your total annual budget. Because you got to factor in that we were already going to give you some money. I mean, the town gets 3% roughly every year. So the 6.4 is being added to the 67. Yep.
Yes.
Okay. And that is just to keep the train on the tracks for right now. Will it get us through a year? Yes. But it won't help us in the next year.
Again, we have the same difficulties that we have every year with the town where, costs exceed 2.5%. And so I think within any override, what we would be looking to the select board to do is ensure that is whatever number is necessary on top of what it takes to provide whatever service amount is being decided on, that there's a number on top of that that would help provide for the additional increases within future years. Again, hopefully new growth, any of that stuff helps offset that. The free cash you have within this year and that you allocate for future years could offset that. But that really becomes somewhat outside of the purview of us in terms of maintaining that. But again, what we are trying to do is, create a budget where we are starting to build back our reserves, so where when things come over, we can deal with that within the school department budget ourselves and not come back where we are today.
We don't want to do this again.
Completely agree.
Nobody does. So you got more slides, I'm hoping, that's going to tell me how we're going to get to the number that you guys, everybody's swinging around the room.
Yes.
Okay.
So I'm hoping that this helps summarize kind of at each level. So this exhibit shows the increase to level service. You can see that first line is our starting point. And so our starting point is our current FY25 budget that's been appropriated to us. The exhibit is summarized by our major budget drivers that we were discussing previously, and those include salary increases. You can see that that is truly the largest part of our budget, and that is the largest budget driver that we're showing for our fiscal year 26 increase. You can also see that there is a reference to some of the changes to the revenue offsets that we receive and that we utilize, and that was that change to circuit breaker. I just want to provide some clarification too. So there are some references in the information to a revenue offset, but then we also reference it as a reserve account. And so I think those two terms have been used interchangeably, so I don't want there to be any confusion. But a revenue offset is any of that outside funding that we may receive to help offset the operating expenses of the school department, whether they be grants, any of the fees that we receive through any of our fee-based programs, which include transportation and athletics. We're also showing increases in our special education costs, transportation costs, our facilities costs, and then in referencing some of the inflationary increases that we're seeing, we do have to make some miscellaneous adjustments. And so this last line truly speaks to, although we're providing, in some instances, the same service, the same textbooks, the same curriculum materials, those materials cost more each and every single year. And so we need to account for that. If we don't account for that and we just assume a flat cost, and then the materials do come in at a higher cost, then that means that we can simply afford less in our budget the next year. And so that's a really important point to just make sure that we are considering when we're doing our budget projections. So again, the largest part of our level service budget for the school department truly is our staff. Our staff they are the ones that are providing this amazing service to all of the approximately 4,300 students that come into our buildings each and every single day. And so this exhibit is just a summary of the overall salary expenses. So we typically in the school department, and this just speaks more to kind of the technical accounting side of creating the budget, we just categorize the salary expenses in 3 major areas. So our primary expense is driven by our professional staff. That's our teaching staff. That's anyone on staff that has a professional license. We also have administrative and clerical staff that support our schools every day, and then support services. That could be our custodial staff, our technology staff, and other staff members. You can see the breakdown there. So when we're looking at the level service budget and creating the level service budget, the salary budget is carefully reviewed annually, and it's adjusted to reflect the current staff at their full-time equivalency, or FTE. So if we have staff that is not working the entirety of the school day, or maybe they're only working 3 out of the 5 school days, that is reflected in their FTE count. Our salary expenses reflect the cost of annual cost of living increases, and a large portion of the salary expenses of the 81% are driven by collective bargaining agreements. So there's very little flexibility. There's very little discretion in what those percentage increases are once we are in an executed collective bargaining agreement.
Which are all coming up.
Which are all coming up, yes.
Okay, so that's another stepping stone.
Yeah.
So I think that also adds just a layer of complexity to creating fiscal year 26. And then we have just increases that truly are representative of experience and years of service for the Milton Public Schools. Our salary expenses also include cost of stipends, so if our teaching staff is staying, kind of providing time outside of the day, whether it's leading extracurricular activities or coaching one of our teams, they are paid a stipend. We also fund the substitute teachers that come in and are hired by the district. We have longevity payments and other miscellaneous payments. So those, the reference to those are more volatile in nature, so we do set a budget, but we hope to be able to stay within those expenditures. They're harder to predict during the course of the year. And the salary budget, just as a note, does not include the cost of our employee health insurance that is on the town side of the budget share cost. Facility staff, that's under consolidated facilities, our cafeteria staff, or our Milton Community School staff. Those cafeteria and community schools are both funded by the self-sustaining revolving accounts. Just another snapshot of the breakdown of our salary budget. This is just overall a summary to reflect adjustments to our staffing, our substitute staffing budget. So the substitute budget has been carried over at the same levels for a number of years. And so as a part of this process, we really tried to take a look at some historical numbers, also taking into account that there was an adjustment made to the substitute budget in November of 2023, and then looking at some of the projected needs. And so the main point on this slide is that the level service budget and the salary budget is truly reflective of our current staffing levels. So it does not include any new staff. It does not include the positions that you saw on that needs-based budget. It truly is reflective of the estimated and projected cost of what our current staff will cost us in the upcoming fiscal year 26. So just in reference to the budget offset, we spoke a little bit about circuit breaker. So budget offset is an outside revenue source. I had mentioned that earlier, and it consists of user fee revolving accounts, some of the federal grants that we do receive on an annual basis, the state reimbursement program, and so that's the program that we refer to as circuit breaker, and other sources. And so we had alluded to it earlier, but a decrease in a budget offset, so the decrease of the availability of circuit breaker, as we try to retain some of the reimbursement that is coming to the district next year to be able to build up that reserve account. It has the same impact on the operating budget as an increase in expenditures. So as we try to make that adjustment in fiscal year 26, the result to the budget is an increase, is the same as an increase in expense. And looking forward to fiscal year 27, we won't have that same impact if we build in the same revenue offset. So it will just be, we had $2 million in 26. If we put in $2 million in 27, it will have a flat effect. It won't have that incremental increase as if it was an expenditure. So the,
Can I ask a question?
of course.
Good.
I have to turn my mic on. What are you hearing on the federal level about some of those? Because it doesn't look good, but I don't know, I'm not on the federal level. So what are you guys hearing?
Go ahead. No, you.
Like, are we, as we're doing this, how much are we relying, how much of this budget are we relying on reimbursements from the feds?
Yeah, I don't have an exact number off the top of my head, but fairly significant with
That's
Title
what I
I, IDEA. We are getting kind of weekly updates from the Superintendent's Association, who are working with the federal organization to keep track of all this. We don't have anything actionable in the development of this budget to be able to move one way or another. I think if there is any change, it would not be instantaneous. So we're hopeful that we would have time to react to that.
Okay.
As you mentioned, it's very fluid, and we're keeping all ears open and eyes open and
You're not
and
alone.
advocating where we
We
can.
are too.
Right. I mean, that should speak to our budget too, because
Right.
we should, last year we didn't put anything in rainy day. So this year we need to put something in rainy day.
We
So,
clouds down south.
We couldn't, but we couldn't last year because we had no money left to do it.
no, because we
Right,
used everything
right.
we had to balance the budget, so that's why. But I'm just saying, with this unknown, we might need a little bit more.
Draft
cushion.
budget, as we've been working on it, includes $500,000 contribution into stabilization from free cash
Okay,
for
thanks.
fiscal '26.
Okay, thank you.
And I think, I have to look, don't quote me, but I thought that sub-budget we passed the other day might have had some circuit breaker money in it.
That's, yeah, I think that's
I'm
what's
pretty
been
sure,
referenced.
I mean, there were a lot, that wasn't the main focus of the day, but I believe that was in there. Okay.
So I had the opportunity to attend a business association meeting today, and there were financial representatives from the Department of Ed that were able to speak to some of the state funding. They spoke to some of the advocacy that was happening to hopefully raise the Chapter 70 per pupil minimum aid from $75 to the $104 that were received last year, which would benefit us as we receive the minimum aid increase per student. And then they also talked about circuit breaker. That was something that I was hoping to learn more about, because that would certainly help us in this fiscal year. They weren't able to provide an update on the timing, but we're not alone in the need of that reimbursement. They underestimated what the costs were going to be, and communities really had such a substantial increase in costs last year. And so that is just going to be continued work. As soon as we have updates, that's something where there may be some opportunity for us to be able to have some additional funding to be reimbursed for some of our transportation costs. And we're hopeful that it is approved for fiscal year '25, so that we'll receive the funding this year, but still more to come on that.
We should make sure that we tell our parents to contact our legislative delegation.
I already voted.
so
I
they
voted
can,
yes, by the way, just so
so
you know,
they
I
can-
voted yes.
So they can help with the sped monies and trying to redo that calculation, including Chapter 70, because that bailed us out last year. That
think
was
this-
part of that money we got.
I think the Senate votes next week. I'm
Yeah, but
pretty
that's
sure.
but you can always
Oh, yeah, I
redo
know.
the formula, Mr. Chair.
I just got there, I'm only a freshman. I voted yes, I paid attention. Go ahead, sorry, go ahead.
That's okay. And so this is just a summary of when we talk about our reserve funds or when we talk about our revenue offsets. This is a summary of the offsets that when we were going through the process of building the budget, the assumptions and the calculations that were utilized for this fiscal year. And then you can see the calculations and the offsets that we are projecting that we'll have available to us for next year. I just wanted to also clarify too, for those that may not be aware, the circuit breaker program, we talk a lot about circuit breaker. It's a state program that helps public school districts pay for special education services for students with high costs. Circuit breaker covers tuition and instruction services and transportation to out-of-district programs, and the reimbursement, the target is 75% of costs that exceed threshold. So just to provide some additional context to when we say the term circuit breaker.
Which is an extremely high number in cases that most people could never imagine.
Correct. So the level service budget also, as we had mentioned, accounts for a number of miscellaneous expenses. And we say miscellaneous expenses, but they truly are the tools that our educators are using every day in our classrooms to be able to interact with our students. Miscellaneous expenses are curriculum materials, any instructional subscriptions, consumables that are used, manipulatives, any of the reading materials that are used. And these items, as we had said previously, are all subject to inflation. Some mandated expenses we're required to cover. We have some mandates for transportation. We have mandates for our educators for professional development, and they are not funded by any outside sources. But in some instances, we are required to provide services to our students, and so we are required to be able to fund those on an annual basis. And again, those are not necessarily always mandated or always funded by the state, nor are the mandates put into place at a time that we're able to make adjustments to the budget. And so that being said, we just need to make sure that we're able to fund those.
Great, back to me. Impacts of level service. What would that mean for our students, for our staff, for our community? It would protect kind of what we are currently doing in terms of the positions that are hired within our schools and the services. We would not have to cut. We would not have to lay off. It would not allow us to expand programming. We would not be able to add any additional transportation service for those families who are looking for that. We would not have funding for new ELA curriculum. We would still have oversubscribed classes at the high school, et cetera, et cetera. And again, that list of needs at the very beginning kind of speaks to a lot of those. Costs will be escalating kind of more than 2.5%. So we look to the select board to understand that, and as we look for a override number to make sure we are creating a number that builds buffer within the townwide budget that accommodates for this over time. Again, at the school we are doing and will continue to do whatever we can to contain costs. Katie is doing a great job negotiating contracts, going back to vendors and saying, is this really your best offer? Do better. And those are the things that we should be doing and we will continue to be doing. But this is what a level service budget would get for our town.
Wait.
Please.
Go ahead.
Can you go back? It says that it's not sustainable for 5 years. So did we miss that bullet?
Yeah. So what we mean by that simply is that if there's, to be clear, if there's 2.5% increases, if that's what we expect to receive for due to Prop 2.5, the school department budget, as you know, is not on an annual basis increasing by 2.5%. Right? And to be clear, I would be probably untruthful to say that next year we expect it to be at 2.5%. So what we think in terms of creating something that is sustainable, we need to expect that, create some buffer within the budget to say that we are going to take a certain amount of money from whatever override amount, call it 1.5, 2 million, whatever y'all are determining. I assume the town administrator has numbers in mind, to put that aside, use free cash in whatever ways you have to help sustain this budget, sustain the increases that will be above 2.5%, because they've been above 2.5% since the last override every year.
When we received $4.5 million of free cash this year, which is the largest amount we've ever received, I thought we hit the lottery. It was gone in 5 minutes. And I just want to ask a question because I want people to understand how serious this is. And I know that sometimes I'll bring humor into a room to try, because this is, as you know, Chair Carroll, we've had more discussions in the past 6 weeks than I can remember. I want every person in this room that's ever been on, we've had, I think, 13 operational overrides in this town since 13 or 11, operational, not debt exclusion, since 1986. I want every person in this room that's ever been on an operational override committee to please raise their hand. And that's why I worry. Can you just please stand and one person put your hand up. What's your name, please? Just stand up, don't be shy. You don't have to come up here, just state your name. What year were you on? 2018?
2017.
2017, 2017. That's the most recent one,
That is the
27.
most recent
That's
one.
it, 2017. No,
No.
that's it. And I say this to you because we are in uncharted waters, and we're gonna get to them when we get, but I want you to understand, and I say it as one who's been on every operational override committee since 1986. And I know Mr. Walker's in the back, and I see Mr. Guy is sitting here, because I'm looking at faces who have been around in these battles. These are hard, beyond hard. They're the hardest things you'll ever do. You talk about words like quality of life and things like that. It's extremely, extremely difficult. Do not underestimate how hard they are. Thank you. I wanted everyone to understand, because even the members here, like, we have a lot of discussions amongst myself, and I often look around them and say, how am I the only one here? But they're hard. Go ahead.
No, we fully understand that. And I think that brings us to kind of option number 3, less than level service. Again, exactly what that number looks like can clearly vary and is the discretion of this board. But the impacts include kind of things that, as a school committee, again, we do not want to see, we cannot advocate for in terms of impact on students. Reduction of supports, increases in class size due to potential cuts to staff, elimination of non-mandatory services such as busing, reduction in operations costs, increased fees. These are all things that we will need to look at depending on what number this board sets in order to create the level service. Anything less than the 6.4 will result in some combination of these. Again, it depends on exactly what the number is.
And that's
so
6.4 specifically just for schools, no other departments.
6.4 is the level service budget for schools. That's what we can support. Yeah, that's what we can speak to.
Mr. Zoll.
Thanks, Mr. Wells. So I think this is maybe another bullet that was on the previous slide that should be on this slide as well. I'm guessing that if we do something that is not level, so imagine that we have an override campaign to increase everyone's taxes, and then the schools get worse, and then next year we're going to be in the same boat again because we are still underfunded. Would that be the case?
We would still expect that in going into SY27, the increase to the school budget would be greater than 2.5% in any of these scenarios. We would expect that. And so we think the responsible thing for the town is to make sure that we are creating buffer within whatever the override number is to make it sustainable over the period of time. So we're not needing to come back for an override in 2 years, 3 years, that we can push that out for the residents.
You good?
I'm good, thank you, Mr.
Go ahead. Sorry, Mr. Warren. Go ahead.
Good. Appreciate all the questions. What are the impacts of a less than level service budget? Again, the benefit is it's fewer cuts than a no override scenario. An override scenario is the worst possible scenario, as you kind of alluded to, I think, Chair Wells. So that is a positive, but they are still cuts, and those cuts will still be very impactful for the people who are impacted by them. Additionally, it will cost us more in taxes to get less in services, and that seems like a hard sell to our neighbors. That is what a less than level service budget gets us.
And that goes for all of our departments, not just the schools. These bullets would apply across the board.
So we wanted to share a little bit about.
So before you go, I don't think, I'm just gonna survey quickly, maybe save you some time. I don't think any of us are at a no override point here, so
Right.
I don't,
Well, it might be important for
All right,
folks
go
to
ahead.
understand
All right, go ahead.
because if there was a vote.
all right, go ahead.
Yeah, so I wanted to share the no override picture and then share kind of what the impact would be at a less than level service override. So a no override budget would be 82.8 FTE loss, which totals $5.4 million. Just to share with you the impact and the kind of the devastation of what that would mean for us. As we looked as a leadership team, as we've been doing this work to determine where would we cut, obviously the first thing we did was collectively say, yes, we have to, student-facing positions have to remain, that is our priority. So that's kind of how we started this process of looking at what we would cut. When you take away this many positions from a school district, you're pretty much taking away all of the supports and leadership that are around the classroom. And you can see here in terms of the proposed cuts and what that would include. And again, this is 5.4 million. It's not whatever the 2.5 million is. You could basically take these numbers and cut them in half as a potential look at what it would be if you had a less than level service override. We're looking at losses in central office leadership. We're looking at a number of directors and instructional coordinators who work throughout the district to sustain many of our services. Up to 20 FTE in elementary and secondary specialists. These are all of those positions outside of the classroom teachers in general education. Up to 8 FTE in student services. In HRS, which is one of our classifications, business office and technology, and some of the central office positions, up to 6 FTE, 13 classroom teacher positions, and up to 30 educational assistants. And I think one of the reasons so many people are in the audience today is because we all feel and know that this is so important to maintain all of these services and supports that we've fought for many years to put in place in our schools, without which we don't feel our students are going to be as successful. Our staff who work so incredibly hard every day are going to be strained even further without all of the positions that. And again, this has happened year over year that we've put these positions in place. This wasn't developed at one time. And I know in conversations with our leadership team, a lot of people have talked about the history of adding these positions and what they've meant. Some of these positions have been there in the district for many years, so they're not all newly added positions. I could talk a long time about it, but yeah, that's it. Yep.
Well, we do want to wrap up so that we can take whatever other questions you have and maybe help pressure test the different options that we've presented here. I want to note that the school committee has not yet formally voted on our budget. That's scheduled for our next meeting at this time on February 26th. However, I feel confident to provide this closing symbol of the school committee's sentiments on this topic. Please don't approve an override number that provides partial funding less than level service. I am speaking as the chair of the school committee, representing our conversations up to this point. That is like that's a no for us. That's a red light. That would be extremely devastating to the services we're able to provide to our children in this district, not to mention to the staff that we rely upon to educate them. So we are hoping to avoid that scenario. A yellow light, a cautious, but bringing reservations, obviously, as presented in depth today, would be to provide funding for level service. We've explained, I think, at length, how and why our level service budget is the way it is for next year. And then finally, of course, back to not losing sight, because we've gone through a lot. At the beginning, we started where we hope to end up, which is some funding for level service, as well as at least some, if not all, of the needs that we've identified. I ask that in the context of our goals. And just to remember these really important points, we want to provide our residents with a return on their investment if we're going to ask them to raise their own taxes. An override is more likely to be approved if they understand the value proposition of that request. It's not only about the dollar amount, but what value they're receiving for the additional taxes that they'll be paying. And I'll say we, I mean, obviously I'll be one of these people raising my own taxes, hopefully. We also want to avoid another operational override for the next 5 years. We've heard that message loud and clear. We're on board with that. But only one option actually guarantees that for us or comes close to that, and that would be the level service with needs. So with that, we thank you again for your attention, for your time. I know this was a lot of time. You have a full agenda. You have many things to consider. We do appreciate this opportunity. So thank you again, Chair Wells, for creating this for us. And I can stop sharing the slides, or if anyone has
Okay.
slides you'd like us
We're
to
on the
go back
slides,
to
right?
in the
We're on the
course of the discussion, I can keep them up.
We're good on the slides. I think I'll
I just
go
have
to
basic questions.
questions from the board members.
I have
Ms.
basic
Bradley,
questions.
go ahead.
So I just want to be crystal clear here. The level services, so the yellow caution light, is 6.4 million? Yes.
That's correct.
Okay, thank you. And the level services plus our needs is how much?
Be 6.4 million plus 1.4 million is the full list of needs.
So 7.8.
That would be 7.8 would be the full amount for the full list of needs.
For the enchiladas. Okay. And that will put us on a path for 5 years. The 7.8 will put us on a path for 5 years where this does not have to be this bad. We think.
Yeah, what the 7.8 would do would be to invest within our kids,
Right.
within our staff, to provide the additional supports, instructional materials,
Okay.
staffing to support the learning that our kids deserve.
Okay.
That's what it would do.
And Nick, for our town, for level services, what is the increase that we need? Because I'm looking at the need list here, and that's, I just lost it, 2 million.
On the town side?
On the town side, I'm trying to get to numbers.
Give me one moment, sorry. It's about
I think-
4.5%.
That doesn't help me.
Increase. It's 30, sorry, I have it right here. Hang on.
Of zero.
Give me one moment and I will pull the dollar amounts.
Is Amy or Johanna here?
Amy is, but.
Amy is, I don't know if she knows.
Do you need it tonight, though? You need it tonight?
I want to know what our end numbers are going to be for both of these options. So I know that the towns
About
need,
1.5 million.
wait, what?
1.5 million.
1.5, that's for level service, and then the need one that you gave us is 2 million, correct?
Yes,
Even
that's
though-
though it's every need ever asked for under the
Yes,
sun.
and one department has a third of that budget, which we're not going to get into that part, but I'm going to put down.
That's the full list.
That's the full list. If we were to do this, everybody in town would be happy, supposedly.
I won't speak for them, but
The 2 million you're talking about? The 2 million?
Yeah.
I haven't even seen that.
Yes, you have. It
Oh, yeah, I
came
did,
up a
okay,
couple
all right,
of-
you're
yes.
right, you're right. Listen, my head is
Sent it out a few
spinning
times.
today.
All right, I'm going to do some math. I'll be back.
Anyone?
I don't have questions for them. I have comments for us.
I do just want to say,
Warren.
we've talked about within the board that, like, while, again, we are here representing the school department, right? That is our role as school committee, and your role is the rest of the town departments. We fully expect and would believe strongly that if there are needs being given to the schools, that those needs also need to be given to the other departments in the town. We believe very strongly there are significant needs within other departments that need to be looked at. We'd be really excited about the select board sharing more of what these needs would be, because I don't think that has been done to this point. Because, you know, we
We
think
haven't-
that
we haven't-
you know,
'cause
this
that-
needs to lift all boats, right?
That
It's
won't
not just
come
about the
until we
schools.
decide on a number, what
Right.
it is and what you're funding versus what you're losing.
Because I've heard all different kinds of numbers, 11.5, 12, all this
Oh, yeah.
stuff, and it actually, the enchiladas all in is 9.8. So that number is really the number that we're looking at. And I would guess that that would probably be a little bit lower once we get some real numbers from the state. Because again,
It's gonna have to be.
those aren't in, and so it would be silly, I mean, we're gonna have to, but I think that those numbers are gonna come in higher, so that might be a 300,000, so we're at 9.5. I just wanna say, I just added up, this is how much of a lift this is gonna be. I added up all the overrides, starting in fiscal year 90 to today. The total of them came to 15 million.
That's right.
And we've had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 overrides in that time. So just in perspective, the chair's not wrong. This is going to be a really big lift that the community is going to have to do. Because that's a big number. 9.8 is a big number, and 15 million over the course of how 35 years. It's a big difference. So there's my numbers for today.
Can I? Go ahead.
Go-
Go
no,
ahead. No,
please
you
go
go first. No, go. I'll go.
I do want to make a particular point here too, which is that Milton doesn't have to be this way. We don't have to every 5 years come back and ask our residents to play this. We need more commercial tax revenue. We need to stop fighting the state. We need to find other ways to fund our town because the tax burden that our residents bear is unconscionable. It's unconscionable as a percentage. 94% of our tax income. We absolutely must develop more commercial, and we must look at federal grants, we must look at state grants. We have to find other sources of revenue because this pattern will repeat itself until we say no to an override. And the moment that we say no to an override, you can replace the American flag in front of Town Hall with a surrender flag, because that's what we're going to be doing. We're going to be giving up on our community. We're going to be giving up on our schools, on our police, on our fires. So please ask your representative officials, including us, to think about not just putting a Band-Aid or a $11 million Band-Aid, whatever you want to call that, on right now, but planning for our future. We have to have a plan for our future because this is not sustainable. Overall, it's just not sustainable. And unless we change the structure of this town so that we can stop burdening our taxpayers with every dollar that we need to raise, this is not going to change.
So
You've heard that speech.
I've heard that speech. Oh, yeah. I think I heard it. I think I heard it in 1990. But it's funny. Someone, a veteran of this community, who's been deeply involved in these for many years, said to me today, and I've heard it a few times now in the past few weeks, is that as much as we want to change, and we've changed, like you and I talk about just the restaurants in Milton. Like we didn't even have such a thing 10 years ago. It didn't even exist, and it brings in a significant amount of money every year that we never had before. But Milton is a community that is, for 300 some odd years, the bulk of everything is on the residents. It's just how it's been. A lot of people take pride in it. A lot of people love it. People use terms of quality. I don't really think about it that much until I hear you said it tonight, and I heard it the other day, someone say it. Look, none of us here, this isn't easy for any of us. It's not. To think that we don't care, every day here we try to manage within the budgets that we have. I mean, I have the benefit, at least for me, that I've been both a department head and an operational side, and now here for 8 years. The amount of money that we're talking about it's truly, Ms. Bradley said, it's like unprecedented. You know, I said it to you when you first, I'm like, I knew it was like, and I watched very closely. I've said this publicly. Braintree last year, they wanted to go for 16 million was their needs-based budget. And they agreed to only pursue 8 because they were too fearful about losing. Because the greatest risk of any override is to fail. And we have never failed on an operational override. Never. And that's why it has to be, as much as this room is filled with people tonight who support the schools, who support this, there are people in homes here tonight who cannot afford it. And you have to remember them as well, because the person who's living week to week now, or month to month on the fixed income, 20 years ago was standing out there holding yes signs to vote for overrides to maintain the quality of life that you and I share today. So that's the key thing, is what is the number we can get that residents can tolerate, and that residents, and I've said this to you many times, that residents will pass. You've heard me privately say a number in my head. I've like, because I just know how hard it is. Which brings me to the last part, which, because I've never seen this in an override before. And I watched last night. I think we all did. I think we all watched last night. It was very painful to watch. It was sad. But unlike any other override I've ever seen, there's a public trust issue here right now, and that's never existed in any override I've ever seen in my life. And we can't solve that. We can't, because it's not on us. We can't, like, I heard you saying you came here and begged last, you did, and I wasn't cheering, and I'm not putting it on the chair like, you can't do an override in 30 days to go. We've been talking about this operational override since they were lined up outside here. I mean, we've said it over and over again. At least for me, you know I am committed to this. I think we all are. Yep. The question is, what can the voters tolerate, and how much can we afford without dramatically impacting the quality of life that people enjoy? And that's really hard. One second. Really hard. So, and I hate to say this, but as I watched last night, I was like, wow, I'd never seen anything like that. And I think that this isn't a time for anybody to high five or cheer or look around or smile or think, like this is serious business. This is a time where you have to roll up your sleeves and you have to get your neighbors on board, whether they have a kid in the 5th grade, preschool, or they're the people who come in this building, fill this building, we are guests in tonight, every single day. Because that's the only way. I've never heard a union leader speak against an override, ever, until last night. That's significant. You said it, Ms. Brown, you need police, you need fire, you need the DPW. We are a town. We're not one, this is where we live, all of us, regardless of your background, anything. This is where you choose to call home. And for me, I know you can think because I've seen so many bad things in my life, so I choose to use humor when sometimes the tension, and when I see this room full as it is tonight, I know that you're not here to have a birthday cake, or we're not gonna set off candles tonight. You're here because you care about your community, whether it's about MBTA, the schools, public safety, whatever it is that brought you in this room tonight is because you care about your community. Don't lose sight in that. And for us, as the leaders of the community, we have to remain committed to you. But it's more than just sending us an email and say, hey, give us this override. This will be frigging, I'm using a frigging word, I could use a lot stronger word, as Carol's heard me use. This is hard. So let's not lose sight of that. Thank you, Mr. Cohen.
You said exactly what I want to say. It's not this room that we need to sell. It's people not in this room that we need to sell. And I also want to say that, I'm sure the staff is on pins and needles, and we need to work this out quickly. And I also want to say that I support an override too. What it is, we have to figure out, but I want people to know that, I want everybody to know that we have to figure this out. I was encouraged at yesterday's meeting, in fact, because I heard people finally being honest about what's going on. And I think we should use this as an opportunity to move together on this issue, move forward. This is a perfect opportunity for us to do that. And we got to restore confidence. We got to restore confidence. Thank you.
Go ahead, Ms. Musso.
Thank you. I had tuned into the meeting yesterday. I didn't know about it ahead of time. I did have a few people reach out afterwards and wondered why it was at 5, and could it have been a little bit later, because a lot of people work till 5. So that was, some comment about that. The theme that came through, I think, that is people do care about the schools, as I do. My kids both went to the schools, and I love the woman who came up here with their kids from Tucker. That's where my kids went to school. So I have a special affinity for Tucker. I did a lot over there when my kids were there. So I think that we all care about the schools. We all understand that an override is needed. I think there's also accountability that needs to happen. Clearly, you heard it from people that were there about trust. Trust, you have to build trust. And when trust has been broken, it takes time to rebuild trust and confidence. And, people want to support something, and they want to support the school, but they want transparency as well. And that came through very clearly in terms of budgets and things like that. People want to see what's in the budgets, what's on each line, what was added, when it was added. And I wanted to ask in terms of when you came in, I think it was June or July, when there was a deficit. From that time forward, what were some of I know that Katie had talked about some of the things now that were being done for the shortfall, but I'm just wondering at that point in time, what things were implemented from then, going forward when you knew there was an issue then, so that we hopefully wouldn't be in these situations? What policies and procedures? Were there things done at that point? I know there are things being done now, and I appreciate that. So I'm just trying to get a sense. I don't know if you can answer that.
Sure, yeah. So, yeah, when that happened, Katie had actually already taken over the position, and our former assistant superintendent was finishing up closing the books. So we actually did from July, we started to institute new policies and procedures, and one of that was really kind of shifting our budget practice in total. We knew after wiping out our reserves that this year was going to be challenging, and we had some structural deficits. So we, kind of began by reining in kind of process and procedure, talking about protocols, being sure that we weren't spending money we didn't have, making sure that we were, as POs came in, as new positions were needed, a special ed aide is needed here or there, that we were creating kind of chains of approval so that we weren't adding onto the budget and then finding out later, which is what had happened previously. So essentially we have, and I kind of tried to share this last night, I think we're on firm ground now. We did in our first quarter report to the school committee, still didn't have a projected deficit. As I said, we were concerned about it, so we were kind of watching and talking a lot about it, and predicted that we may have one when we got to second quarter. As Katie mentioned, we did share that we were looking at a projected deficit, and we've been working on that as we go through the year to close out the year and shrink that as we shared tonight.
Mr. Chair, I just wanted to follow up on that.
Ms. Bradley and then Mr. Zoll.
They came, I do remember, because at that time I was the chair of the Finance Committee. They came, and at that point, I think you guys thought it was a $4.5 million deficit. So I'm happy to see that we're down to $650. Way to go. That's a feat that you should take a little bit of pride in. But I do know that you guys had come to us back in, I think it was August, I want to say, and actually, it was the former assistant superintendent, and actually said to us that you were looking at that deficit. So that is something that had been brought to the select board, and I just didn't want to lose that thread, because it has been talked about publicly. So, thank you.
Mr. Zoll.
This is just a quick comment, or I guess it's a question, and I don't expect you to have the answer. If you do, I'd be pleased. When I ran for select board 2 years ago, we were spending $2,000 less than the state average per pupil, which I think is shameful. And it's just been pointed out, I think the last couple of weeks or months, somebody's told me that we're now closer to $3,000 less than the state average per pupil. So we're actually spending even less money now on our kids than we were spending 2 years ago. So I want to say first and foremost, the fact that we have a functional school system is an immense credit to the teachers and educators that they do so much for our kids. And I know I obviously have kids in the school system. This went to some of your budget, I think, or at least helped the athletics department out. Our parents are always chipping in. When we go to see a play, we throw some money in the till. When we go to the football game, we buy our tickets. Everyone is really pulling their best I would be curious to know if if we were able to successfully pass an override that included the needs plus the level services. I'm sure that we'd still be under the state average, but I'd be curious to know where we would be on a per pupil basis compared to the state. And if you have that number now, I would be super impressed. If you don't, I would love to learn about it in the future.
Our per pupil average is, I think, around 18,000 per student. The state average is 2,700. And so
27.
that's where we are. We're in the 30th to 20,700. Yeah, we're in the 30th percentile. That's as of 2023. Just to be clear, it's a lagging indicator the state puts together, so it's kind of about 2 years behind in terms of fiscal years. So that's the most recent data, and it's released in January of every year. 10 years ago we were in the 45th percentile, so it has gone down.
And we don't know, we don't know for the.
It's hard to say because it's not just dependent upon our own spending, it's dependent upon everybody else. And again, it's a 2-year lag. So it's a little bit difficult to say.
I think as we approach a campaign, sorry, just a quick follow-up, that information like that I think would be very helpful as we talk about an override and what the consequences are. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just want to say that, once again, we get inundated every once in a while for certain topics. We have been inundated with emails again. My phone, and I know Mr. Chair's phone, was blowing up all weekend.
Still is.
I know. And I just wanted to say, piggybacking off of what I said about how this was going to be a hard push and how it really is going to come back down to the community if we're going to push for this 9.8, one of the beacons of hope that I saw was that in a 24-hour period, one letter was able to get 500 signatures. And so I think that is something that I'm going to rely on when I go to make my final vote and my decisions, because we can't do it alone. They can't do it alone. It's going to take all of us in this boat together, and that was really something that helped lift me up this weekend. So I just want to thank whoever was organizing that. It did make a difference, and I did read every name. So thank you.
Go ahead.
Final
comment.
so-
Final comment. What show was that? What show was that?
Who wants to be a millionaire?
So speaking of that letter, I had the opportunity to read that as well. And I would like to just ask you to consider something that letter raised. Beverly Ross Denny raised it in the public comment as well. As you think about the number and you weigh the pros and cons of the different options before you, and even the different sort of levels within the options before you, please think beyond just one round number that you believe may be the sort of magic number that we can win with. I think it's really going to be important for you, in addition, to consider the differentials between, the trade-offs of what someone is going to pay for what they're going to receive. And I know that letter did a pretty thorough job of providing detailed breakdowns of, what different scenarios are going to cost the average homeowner taxpayer, but what they would be receiving in return for that. And I just really caution all of us in moving forward to consider the challenge of cutting services while raising our taxes. I think even if that might feel more attractive for the number being lower overall, I don't think that's going to necessarily be more attractive for voters going into the ballot box, making that choice. And so we are available, for whatever information you may find yourselves needing if you're not voting tonight, before you do take your vote. I want to just end on something you mentioned, Chair Wells, which is, I think, a strong theme that did emerge from the discussion last night. which was a challenging discussion, I think, and an important discussion to have. And I know that we all appreciated the opportunity to hear from our neighbors, their concerns, their questions, and their support, which was also voiced. We do need to work together as a town. We need to work together across departments. We need to work together within departments. And that is something that we are actively working to do every day. And we need to work together with you because we are the leaders elected by the residents of Milton to do right by them. And, I appreciate your taking this time to kind of hear from our perspective what really matters most when we think about our schools. And if you have other information that you find yourselves needing, we're available. And I'd like to really thank, before we wrap, all of my colleagues on the school committee. As you all know, this is not easy, okay? We are here, we are volunteering our time because we care. I know that's the same for all of you. Really appreciate the dedication of my colleagues who have so much integrity in this work that we do. And I really would like to thank Dr. Burrows, Assistant Superintendent Blake, and Assistant Superintendent Watts, who are also doing great work leading all of our amazing staff. And keep up the great work. We're doing our best, even though we could definitely use some more support. So thank you.
I would like to make one final point before you all go. Because it could be easy to be lost in this. A comment was made tonight earlier about that Dr. Pavlicek was my friend and that he supported me. Well, I met Dr. Pavlicek many years ago. I didn't know him. He wasn't my friend. I met him when he was on the warrant committee, and I was a deputy chief then. He might have been chair. He was pretty tough. He was very tough on us. He was very tough on all the departments. Mr. Gaius is sitting back there smiling because she knows what I'm referring to. And then he came to the school committee, and I think when he first ran, he lost, and then he won the second time. It's easy to, forget things, the history that gets you to where you're at. And I just want to say that I judge people on what I see they contribute in life and what they contribute to a community and what they contribute to an organization. There are things in those schools today, programs, buses, fields, educational stuff, computers. Nobody fought harder with us to put the Chromebooks from, as Mr. Walker can recall, the former school committee in the back, to include those Chromebooks into an operational budget than he did for the students of this town. So I know some remarks have been made about him tonight. Don't doubt for 1 second in your lives that Glenn Pavlicek was not a warrior for the students of this town, because he was. He's right up there with Charlie Winchester and so many others that fought so hard for your children for so many years. That'd be my final comment. Thank you all for tonight.
Well said, thank you.
So we're going to go into executive session. We're going to recess. We're going to take a, which one?
Like, do we have to acknowledge?
No, we don't have to do that. No, we don't even have to. Do we have to acknowledge?
It's covered.
It's covered.
I
They
think,
covered it.
right?
They covered it, yeah.
Yeah.
So we're going to adjourn to go into executive session for a quick 10 minutes on item, I got to take a vote first.
To do anything.
You have to make a motion.
I have to make, I have to make the motion. So, thank you all for your time, those of you that are leaving, those of you that are staying. So I'm going to make a motion pursuant to Mass General Law, Chapter 30, Section 21A, to enter an executive session, discussion strategy with respect to litigation, Attorney General versus the Town of Milton et al., Supreme Judicial Court of Suffolk County. The board will return to open session following that.
I second.
Second by, I made the motion, Ms. Bradley, Ms. Musto, yes, Ms. Bradley, yes.
Yes.
Ms. Goyen, yes.
Yes.
Mr. Zoll, yes, myself, yes. We're in executive session. We'll be back. meetings. Welcome back. So, we are at item number 7, discussion approval, Town of Milton Action Plan per emergency regulations related to the Mass General Law, Chapter 48, Section 3A, MBTA Communities Act. So, am I having you, what am I? I'm a lot.
You could throw it to Nick.
Yeah, so I'm gonna do that right now. So, do you want me to just, do you want?
I'm not sure what we, I think
All
we're
right.
just gonna meet on Friday.
All right,
as a board.
so,
We're not having any discussion.
we will not be taking a vote tonight. And we will meet on Friday morning to finalize what we're going to do. I will give you one update. First off, I want to thank the members because, and I want to thank all of you because this has been, and town council and Mr. Monaco, because this has been a very tough thing. And I also want to thank Senator Driscoll, who today arranged with me a personal meeting with Housing Secretary Augustus, and we spent an hour together, and it was, I'd say productive, but it had some light to it, and I'm appreciative to him for the time he spent with us to hear us today on this. This is clearly a tough issue. It's probably the toughest issue this town's ever faced. I don't know if are we gonna vote? It's just, my head's spinning right now, so can you just update me what we're doing here?
I understood no action this
So
evening,
we're
and we'd
yeah.
reconvene on Friday morning.
We're not going to take any action tonight. We are going to reconvene on Friday morning, where we will then take a decision and we will take an action. It'll be on Zoom, so there won't be any public comment. We know where you're all at on this. I will say that, just briefly, with Secretary Augustus today, and I know I'm in a unique role, and he was aware of that I sit in 2 roles now, here and as well as in the legislature, and I know I'm brand new there. But Senator Driscoll, really, he's worked on this for a long time. There is, there are a lot of complex issues. Earlier today, I had thought of going one way, but personally, I'm thinking another way now. And I will say this, and I said this to him today, to the Secretary, this is not an anti-housing thing. I'm not, anyone who knows me and people who know the role I play, particularly at the Keeper, this is important to all of us, but it's a fairness thing. And one of the things that Senator Driscoll and I did talk today about with him at length is, I kind of said it this way, I think in 15 years that trolley won't even be there. And so if that's the case, then why are we not focusing on the commuter rail? So to the members of the planning board that are here, the one thing I would ask you to focus on is to begin work to focus on looking at this community as a adjacent commuter, isn't it? Am I right, Nick? Am I using the term right? I've had so many terms in my head today, I don't want to misspeak. And I said this to Chair Hall earlier today when I called her, is to begin to look at our community as a adjacent community to the 3 commuter, I know of at least 2. I heard today in meetings there were 3. I don't know where the 3rd one is, but I know what 2 of them are. And while there's nothing official, that was a discussion that we started to have today. And I hope, and they offered today, that perhaps to have the planning staff, some of the planning personnel, Mr. Milano, come in to HLC and meet with their staff, the staff that handles zoning, the things like that. I do think that he was really unaware of what a commuter, what a point, I think they've been focusing on what was our rapid, and was still considered a rapid, that didn't go away, although we did talk at length to them today about this. So it's not my expertise, and as those of you who know, I don't like being ahead of my skis. I don't like that. This is more your thing and their thing, and I know we don't have a town planner right now, but I would like to see us get to the point where we have before town meeting is it 960, and what is it, Chair? Is it whatever the 10% is in past, because I do believe for all of us, including all of you on both sides of this issue who worked so hard either ways, that had that been the case in the beginning, none of you would be sitting here. We wouldn't be having this discussion today. So I know I'm only one person, and I really, again, I thank my colleagues, because we just had a pretty everyone cares about this. Again, I thank Senator Driscoll. So we won't be voting tonight, but we will be taking a position on this Friday morning.
Mr. Chair.
Yes, ma'am.
The meeting that you mentioned with HLC, I would like to just say for the record that that should only be town staff or elected officials that attend that,
Oh,
okay?
yeah, and that's all he invited.
Thank
So
you.
I'm like, and I don't even need to be there. I don't need to be there. I went today, that was good. So I'm fine, yeah. And that's what they want to see, the planning staff is, he mentioned Mr. Milano. I think that's because you and he have already met on this. I don't think any of us would have any intention to be there. This is really for you guys, the case that you would make, and I'd be remiss to not recognize Attorney Doherty, who's here tonight, who's put in yeoman's hours on this of his own time, very well. So that's it. That's it for tonight.
We still have a couple things.
Well, we
Oh, yeah, no, not for us, for them, for them. They can go home. So, all right.
They had to watch the whole thing.
All right, so,
Yes.
so item number 9, discussion approval, board committee appointments.
Mr. Chair, if I could,
Sorry.
just,
Go ahead,
if
go
you
ahead.
don't mind.
go ahead.
On
Thank you
item-
all.
On item 8, the public comment letter, so this comment letter is due the 21st. The select board, we now have a meeting between now and the 21st, but I don't know if we want to talk about that Friday. I've drafted a lengthy comment. Some edits were suggested, those were circulated. So if you have any other comments, questions, concerns about that comment letter, we can incorporate some changes and feedback over the next couple days as we try to get a new version out to members from there.
That's the longer letter?
It's like 5 pages.
Milton
maybe.
draft comment letter.
Thank you.
The dates were the killers. They both had the same date on them, like
Oh,
February
yeah.
21st.
Well, yeah, that's my dating. Oh, sorry. Yeah, so the longer one, it's like 5 pages, back and forth.
This
Yeah.
says comments? Okay.
Yeah. Okay. Okay, just want me to keep going? Okay, all right, well then. All right, so are we gonna
I'll make a
table that?
motion to appoint Josh Thompson to the Airplane Noise Advisory Council, or
Committee.
Airplane Noise Advisory Committee for a term to expire on June 30th, 2026.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Okay, I'll just do we do roll call?
No.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Yeah.
Aye, okay. Next,
We're skipping 11, I think, right?
right. With
Nope, item 11 we have.
Oh, sorry.
pilot
Pilot.
program. So, someone make a motion for that?
That we accept the $110,000?
Yeah, move to accept the pilot payment from Curry College in the amount of $100,000.
The
All those in
letter
favor?
says 110.
$110,000,
It's
sorry.
110, yeah.
Yeah,
110.
110.
Is that an increase or from last year?
They've been at that level for a few years.
Oh,
We should probably talk to them about increasing some pilot, considering the conversation we had tonight.
Okay,
Are you
second?
volunteering to be chair of the pilot committee?
All right, second on that?
Second, sorry.
Okay.
All those in favor?
Yeah.
Yes.
Aye,
Aye.
okay. Where are we to, okay, item number, with the town administrator's report?
Yeah.
Yep.
Oh, my God. Mr. Milano.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I don't have too much tonight, just wanted to thank DPW staff for the kind of regular call-outs they've been getting. And luckily for them, I guess, is that there've been a lot of Saturday, Sunday storms, so overtime, time and a half, and double time. But it's been a lot of work, busy season, these recurring couple inches of snow every couple of days, storms we could do without, but that's the winter we've been dealt, so thanks for them for their hard work and ongoing efforts. DPW park staff contribute as well. It's a lot of work every storm. And then secondly, I just wanted to acknowledge all the work from Milton Police, Coastal Ambulance, Milton Fire, in responding to the shooting on Belvoir Road. That was, it's these domestic violence incidents you never want to see in a town. It's just a striking reminder that how prevalent that is as an issue in every community, really. But this is an individual who was shot multiple times. Quick work by everybody involved, not only to get her to Boston Medical Center into treatment, but also to track down the assailant and arrest them. So appreciate the work of Milton Police, Coastal Ambulance, Milton Fire on that one, and hopefully we can go at least a year without another incident like it in Milton. And we've been lucky that they are few and far between, but they do happen.
I agree.
That's all I have. Thank you this evening.
I've talked enough today.
I wanted to
Miss-
give a
go ahead,
shout
Miss
out.
Bradley, go ahead.
Thank you. I just want to give a shout out to Marina, who just started her job at the DPW, and she's already killing it. I can't believe how much my road was plowed and the sidewalks were plowed. They just kept zooping up and down. So I just want to give a shout out to her, as I always like to do with the ladies, and just say thank you. She's rocking it, and I'm really happy she's there.
If I may, there was also a fantastic Lunar New Year celebration on Friday at Pierce Middle School. I know Bao Qiu was one of the primary organizers. It was a really lovely event. There was a huge turnout, actually. And so I think if you missed it this year, come next year. Wear red.
We had a whole contingent show up at the our office in the State House. So it ran the same thing, huge one in Randolph, enormous. Like, that's good. Anybody else?
I do have a item
Go
for
for it.
public comment response.
Oh yeah, I forgot.
Sorry.
No, that's okay.
I just wanted to correct a couple of things that were said about the MBTA Communities Act and public response. Ms. Swenson alleged that it would cost tens of millions of dollars to the town to implement a plan. Of course, we know that that's not true. We had an economic study that showed that the plan that was turned down last year was going to increase our tax revenue by about $1 million a year. Also, I think Mr. Kelly said that the vote was to reject the law, and that is also incorrect. It was a vote on a specific zoning plan. It was not a vote to reject the law. There are many people who voted no, who believe in housing, who wanted Milton to comply. They just didn't like the particular plan. That's it.
Okay. We good? Everybody? You? Motion to adjourn?
Oh, sorry, no, jeez.
Oh.
Logistics, Friday morning,
Yeah,
time.
we got-
Future
Oh,
meeting.
how about 11? Can we do?
And we need to talk about those because I got
yeah,
another
so,
one to follow on.
by the way-
So Friday is the 14th, Valentine's Day.
And did you see that? Did I send you that request? Who did I send the request from? Chris Hart? Did you see that? Are we meeting on March 4th?
That is not one of our meeting dates. If the board is open to shifting around our meeting,
I can't do the 4th.
Chris Hart is asked to come in and be
He
after
did.
that
So
Creative
is
Justice
the
for All.
4th a regular day for us?
No, the 11th would be our normal one.
All right, so can,
Can he come
Bless
on?
you.
Sorry?
no, he's limited. It'll be Pat Lattimore if it's not Chris.
I don't have to be here. You guys can do it another time.
I also won't be here.
No, he won't be here either. So he just asked me today, do we meet on the 4th? I said I'll get back. That's why I sent, didn't even look at the calendar. I just knew that. Because he had asked me, but he's told me he's teaching
Oh, that's
a
why
night
he
class.
asked.
Yeah, he's teaching a night class.
Spring
so
break that week.
That's what it is then, okay.
That's why he
So,
asked.
Love that word.
he did
Yeah.
email with that, so, I'll email him back tomorrow and ask him, like, listen, I know he wants to get this done, but he did say to me Pat would come in, so we'll get Pat scheduled for March to come in.
All right.
We're gonna keep our regular meeting dates in March, yes?
Yeah, the
Okay,
11th.
All right,
and,
okay.
we
11th
have the
and
special town-
25th?
We have the town meeting
11th
on
and-
the
Oh,
24th.
25th.
25th.
Oh, it's my Florian's birthday.
So Friday morning, 11 a.m.?
This Friday?
Yes,
By
no,
Zoom.
what's up with Friday?
You doing
Friday
it
11,
earlier?
how about 11:30? Can anyone do 11:30? Is that too late?
I can do 11.
I could do 11:30.
Okay, 11:30 works.
Is that all right? That's it?
Is it okay?
Earlier would be better, but if you guys,
I gotta
can't.
go, I'm going to a funeral
Don't
at
forget,
10, that's what I
don't
wanna
forget
do.
it's Valentine's Day.
Oh, that's right, yeah.
That's for at night.
I'll make it work, 11:30?
Elaine, you're a soldier over there,
Oh.
warrior.
And then just to be, we do need to talk about the budget again.
Yeah.
Yeah, when are
So
we
our
gonna-
meeting schedule is tricky because we're slated for the week of town meeting for the 24th, 25th, 26th. So if the board is open to it, we could add a meeting next week. I know it's school vacation week. We have two issues that are time
The
sensitive.
18th?
The budget at some point, but we do need to talk about the East Milton Fire Station, and we need to
Yes.
take a vote on that before the end of the month. That could conceivably be the night of the 24th if we started early.
Okay.
So we don't necessarily need to meet next week, but it just
If we
means
start the meeting, or you want to
we
start
start
the
at
meeting?
like 6 maybe, or
We do that on the
6:30
24th?
on the
No, you
24th.
can't.
So I was gonna try to go to class, my class is out at 7:20, and then come back and make it for town meeting on Monday, but if you want me to take an absence, I will, for the town.
No, that's fine. That's a
No.
town meeting night?
Yeah,
The 24th?
yeah.
We're gonna meet before town meeting, but
Yeah, I just wouldn't be here.
that's all right. So what is it we need to vote?
Well, the
on the
budget.
East Milton Fire Station, but also we need to talk about the budget. So if it makes more sense to meet next week on Tuesday night to
When do you
take
need
up
the
both.
number? When does he need the, I've asked you this
I
every
know
time, haven't I?
It was supposed to be today, I thought.
It's, the difficulty is, and look, I hear them.
You
It's
can't
like,
do the
I don't even know how to walk in a, I don't even know how to.
I could do the 18th.
The other thing too is, I'm worried, and you've heard me say this to
We're
Chair
not talking
Carroll,
about
like, they don't have a committee yet. They need a,
I know, but we're not talking about, we're talking about scheduling.
I thought you were just talking about wanted the number. You will get into the, oh, that's
To
like,
the
oh, I
number
know.
so that he
Timeline,
could.
yeah, schedule.
It's a timeline question.
So on the 18th, if the board wanted to meet, we
Sorry.
could talk
It's
about
okay.
the budget, not
That's how much
necessarily
it's weighing on me tonight. It's weighing on me, huh?
Select board doesn't necessarily need to make a decision again, but at least if there's, more dialogue that needs to happen, that could happen on the 18th, and we could take up East Milton Fire Station and not have too much on the plate the week of town meeting, since those will be long nights anyway.
I'm fine with that. I could do the 18th.
Okay,
I could do the
Does that
18th.
work?
Is that okay with you?
Yeah, I can do that.
okay.
Make it work.
So
Instead
then-
of the 24th?
We
we'll
we
be
can
town
have a
meeting.
shorter
Oh,
meeting.
it'll be
than
time,
that
oh, yeah,
24th.
okay. I'm okay
And
with that.
I'm just gonna come at 7:45.
Okay.
That's fine. That's, like, look, it just,
It's a boring class, I wish I could miss it, but
no, don't worry about that.
Might be
Usual
watching.
time, 7 PM.
it's actually about the APA.
Your professor could be watching
He
right
could be
now.
watching.
Okay.
All right?
So plan on the 18th. That agenda will need to be posted on Thursday because of the holiday, so we'll get that out. It'll be, I think, pretty limited, maybe the town meeting articles, budget, and East Milton Fire Station.
Okay.
Okay.
Motion. We can-
And MBTA Community's public comment, actually, so that works.
Motion adjourned?
Motion to adjourn.
Second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you all so much. Thank you everyone at home too for your patience and time tonight.